Our next type of witness are the impacted witnesses. And impacted witnesses are the kind that will tell stories about the impact of race, racism, or instances of racial disparity on their own lives and the larger communities in which they live. This is significant because they will help us to be sensitive to the fact that being racialized as Black and brown in this context has an impact on your life. The Reverend Glencie Rhedrick will introduce us to our first witness, Miss Ebony Lockett. Reverend Rhedrick.
I have the pleasure of introducing Ebony Lockett. Ebony Lockett has a master's degree in education and is passionate about her civil rights and social action, economic empowerment, education, health, and social services. A CMS English teacher since 2007, she founded Harvesting Humanity in 2018, whose mission is to innovate and execute holistic integrated science, technology, reading and writing, engineering, arts, architecture, and mathematics curricular and experiences to engage, prepare, and position diverse local, national, and global solutionaries. Hear ye, Ebony Lockett, our impacted witness.
Thank you, Reverend Rhedrick, for that introduction. And when deciding how to begin the telling of my environmental justice story, I had to cocoon myself in that familial love which cradled me, arms that were sculpted by decades of digging and sowing and weeding and harvesting, yet rarely reaping anything but a migrant worker's misery and an immigrant farmer's destiny. Those are my humble beginnings. I remember vividly my grandmother telling me stories of Belglade, Florida, her family history as migrant farm workers, some of that life they lived and experienced. I had to be held in the humble hearts of griots before me like her. I had to hear their words whispering through the winds to be reminded of the Sankofa principle, of going back to move forward. So I will take you back. I will take you back to my elementary school days. I will take you back to the Mayas that were interwoven throughout our adjourning projects, serving as separate grade level schoolhouses for South Arsenal Neighborhood Development Schools, also known to us who attended as Sands Everywhere Elementary School, in the capital city of Hartford, state of Connecticut. I will take you back to that summer just after 6th grade when some of us were at the cusp of saying goodbye to childhood innocence and being thrust gleefully or otherwise into adolescence. I will take you back to that summer just after 6th grade when some of us had lost our childhood innocence long before the traumas of that time. I will take you back to that summer just after 6th grade when some of us were playing at the school/neighborhood playground situated in the middle of Sands Everywhere Elementary School, Sands high-rise residential project, Bellevue Square's concrete housing project, and our intersecting Main Street. I will take you back to that summer just after 6th grade when our schoolmate Sandra collapsed and died while a group of us played at that park. We had all known that Sandra suffered from asthma, but we had never expected that it would claim her life. There were a lot of us who intimately or domestically or tangentially dealt with asthma, so it didn't seem like such an unusual chronic condition or a particularly deadly one. Consequences often skewed at that age because right there on the grassy banks of our school neighborhood playground, Sandra collapsed and died, and we had never seen it coming. It was many minutes before the paramedics arrived, and I still do not recall, even after a few phone calls to family and childhood friends, I still do not recall the precise hour of the day or who called the paramedics or who all the other players were in the subsequent series of events. Maybe my limited recollection is my mind's way of shielding my heart from moments of this memory, but what will never be erased, what remains most seared in my mind's eye, is Sandra's open blouse and lifeless body. The paramedics' pumps frantically trying to revive her, and the desperate grief on her father's face at her memorial service. To learn later in life that this and other tragedies connected to the built environments in which we live, work, play, and worship are disproportionately and many times intentionally designed and allocated to disregard the health and wellness of some and prioritize the health and wellness of others. To learn this inconvenient truth rocked me to the core. The US Department of Health and Human Services report that non-Hispanic African Americans are 40% more likely to have asthma than non-Hispanic whites in 2018. We are talking in the year 2018. In 2019, they reported that non-Hispanic Black children had a death rate 8 times that of non-Hispanic white children. And we ask ourselves about those disparities. We asked ourselves how in 2019 we are still fighting the same fight: clean air, environments that do not depend on what color your skin is or how much money is in your savings account. To learn that the location and design of our adjoining projects, our neighborhood schools, the railroads that separated us from prosperity, and the dump that made its home about 4 minutes driving distance from our backyards. To learn that all that represented the value placed on our majority Black and brown lungs, our lived experiences, and our overall health and wellness, or dare I say, the lack thereof. To learn that the most basic human rights, healthy food and healthy air, are denied again and again and again. To learn this devalued proposition set for Black and brown and Indigenous lives again and again and again. To learn this set me on a crusade for environmental justice, which permeates and propels both my professional and my personal work to this day. Almost 40 years later, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. Largely Black and brown and rural poor frontline and fence line communities across our city, across our county, across our nation, across our world, increasingly suffer from the fruits of the poisonous trees of redlining, disinvestment, proximity to polluting plants and toxic runoffs, subpar water and waste systems, and the list goes on. Largely Black and brown and rural poor lives are minimized in value and worth and easily desecrated and discarded. To move forward, we must not only learn the lessons of our ancestral griots taught to us, but we must also learn from the historically racist, immoral, and unjust policies and practices that helped to get us to this disastrous place. And we must use those lessons to chart a new path forward for our planet and for its people, particularly and especially for those communities most impacted by the harms of environmental injustice, like the one I spent my formative years navigating, and the one that ultimately claimed the lives, health, and well-being of Sandra and so many others, including the migrant, immigrant, and Indigenous upon whose shoulders we stand. Thank you.
We will now have questions from Reverend Glencie Rhedrick. Thank you so much for your testimony, Eboné.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for engaging us this evening. So yes, I have 3 questions that I'd like to ask of you, Ebony, and can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just well.
Okay, and let me come on camera. You have been helping educate the public about EJ communities throughout the North Carolina Climate Ambassador Program. What moved you to be a part of this?
Humanity, just my hope and belief in humanity. Of course, my lived experience, my humble beginnings, my ancestry. Again, I'll drop a link in the chat, but there's CBS did a special years ago on what I learned was a family member of mine, Thomas Lockett. And Thomas would have been my great uncle. I believe I got that lineage right, but don't quote me on that part of it, but he was definitely a family member. And they tell about the life of the migrant farmers who moved from Belglade to this place, and there was such a diverse group of people, but understanding that I had a responsibility, that in my bloodline, there was a responsibility to do this work. I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. When it is in the bloodline, we can't ignore it, and we do have to respond. And so I thank you for the work that you are doing. If you are ready for me to ask you the second question. Okay. So how do you see the connection between our environment and our health?
So I spent the whole day today with Leadership Charlotte as a member of class of 43. And our whole day today was about healthcare. We were able to lift up the powerful work of Dr. Ophelia Garman-Brown. And that just connects to my response to that second question, because it is, without the right food to eat, without the right air to breathe, without the right environment to thrive, we don't exist. And so like that connection is so intimate, and it just played out today again and again in every conversation. We had a few doctors on the line. We had several clinicians that work in the mental health space and the social service space, and everyone said the same thing. This is a public health crisis because all of these intersecting facets of life and the intersectionality of the way that we live, we work, we play, we worship, those are things we can't dissect and we can't worry about in silos. We've got to have a comprehensive plan for it.
Okay, thank you. If you could prioritize one aspect of policy to change to begin to counter this environmental racism, what would that be? What would that one thing be?
I think I would have to go with monetary reparations.
Okay.
Administering monetary reparations so that we really start to work to closing the racial wealth gap, because all of these things, even the income, when we talk about income levels and economic empowerment, the sad truth is that's a resource that's needed as well in this fight. And so with an opportunity to, own more homes and the opportunity to actually have access and be able to pay for better healthcare, all of those things would kind of be alleviated if we start to narrow, if we start to, really, really work on narrowing those gaps.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for just showing your love for the work. You have touched, I know, my heart, and I'm sure the heart of others that are listening. And I look forward to seeing you out there doing more of the work. Blessings.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Our next speaker will be Samantha Turner, who will be our affirming commissioner. Samantha.
Hello, and thank you so much for your testimony, Ms. Lockett. I've heard a lot of testimony, but it's not testimony. I'm sorry. I've heard so much data on environmental injustice, but the story you told, wow. I've never heard a story about children watching their friend die in front of them, like you said, by design. When I think about you saying going back to move forward, I think about the fact that Charlotte was founded by colonists. It wasn't founded, it was colonized in the mid 1700s. So we know that this city was built by enslaved people. We know that they built the beautiful city that we live in, and they deserve the best parts of it. I agree completely that we need reparations and we need to end racist environmental practices. I am an activist, and I will amplify your story in my community and mobilize people in my own community to take serious and impactful action against these racist environmental practices that are sickening and killing Black and brown people in so many ways. This crescent and wedge goes back to the beginning of the building of the city, and it was definitely by design. And I feel your hope. I too am a humanist. I am counting on humanity to get us out of this, and I'm doing the work with you, and I stand with you, and I cannot stop either. So thank you so much for your testimony.
Amen. Thank you, Samantha, for your response there. Thank you, Ebone, for your testimony, and Reverend Glencie for serving as our introducer in chief and also for our questioner.